That spark of innovation, it's just waiting for the perfect combination of tools and talent to bring it to life. Welcome to Pitch, Build, Scale. I'm your host, Chris Fanchi, a recovering startup founder, veteran SaaS marketer, turned dev tech enthusiast and growth specialist. Each episode, we connect with the builders, the visionaries, and the problem solvers who are redefining what's possible with today's technology and pioneering the websites, apps, and software products of tomorrow. These are the conversations that transform how we build, how we sell, and how we scale technology businesses in a world where the tech evolves by the minute. Ready to stay ahead of the curve? This is Pitch, Build, Scale. Hello and welcome to today's episode. We have a very exciting guest. For those of you just joining the podcast, we are Big North Marketing and specialize in helping dev shops and SaaS companies scale their revenue. So if you want to learn how to take your SaaS or dev business to the next level, make sure to stick around. And if you're interested in a free growth consultation, just drop us the word growth in the DMs. We're really excited to have today's guest, Robin Eissler, CEO of BoosterHub, a platform dedicated to maximizing the impact of volunteers and helping high school booster clubs thrive. Robin brings a unique background from coordinating civilian airlifts during disasters to empowering parent volunteers. She's a powerhouse of operational insight and passion for giving back. Robin, welcome to Pitch, Build, Scale.
Hi, Chris. Thank you for having me. I'm excited to be here.
So let's just get things started with telling us a little bit about your journey. So your career path is fascinating, from crisis aviation and logistics to leading a software platform for nonprofits. How did this transition happen?
Yeah, it's kind of crazy. I started off with airplanes and somehow made it to high school sports, not related at all, but the journey is certainly connected. I started off in business about 25 years ago selling corporate aircraft. So that was my day job, kind of like a real estate broker. And through those times, through that role, got connected with doing civilian airlifts, so charity flights for mostly disasters. So it started during Hurricane Katrina in New Orleans. There were a lot of people that were stuck and couldn't get out. And I thought, well, we have all these people that have these planes. We can probably help them get out. So it grew out of that. And then again, we did another airlift in 2010 after the earthquake in Haiti. That was probably our most life-saving efforts. We did a lot of medical evacuations of people that had been really severely injured in the earthquake. And then again in 2017, when there was a series of hurricanes, one that came through Texas, Hurricane Harvey, and did a lot of damage. We ended up being a lifeline to the area around Beaumont, specifically Orange, Texas. And we're literally running about 20 flights a day in and out of there, just keeping them supplied with food and stuff as I-10 was shut down for a few days there. So through that time, I did a lot of volunteer work with those organizations. And at the same time, was volunteering in my kids' schools for things like, being on the board of the preschool. And then as my kids got into high school, got involved with the sports booster clubs. And so along the way through all of those volunteer run efforts, I started to see a pattern that these organizations needed infrastructure, and they needed a slightly different style of infrastructure than we see in the for-profit world. Um, when you have volunteers moving in and moving out, there's a short window of time that they're working in the organization typically. So they need one tool that does it all. Like they don't know how to set up a Zap that'll move something from QuickBooks over to your CRM, that'll connect to your marketing, that'll talk to your Facebook. They're just there to volunteer their time. They need to do the few tasks that they're doing in that organization. They need all the information, from a previous volunteer. So about the time my kids were ready to go to college, I came up with this idea and launched into starting a software company. That's the long story short, right?
Yeah, quite a journey. So going from business, did you have any technical background, or were you coming in cold trying to figure everything out?
Yeah, the only thing I had dabbled in a little bit was building a website, and then I had also done a little custom CRM work in the aircraft business. Our aircraft sales company had grown fairly good size, and we had built a lot of sales processes in our CRM. And then I sold that business in 2017. And that's actually when I got roped into being the president of the Booster Club because I had all this time on my hands. And, a couple days in, I'm like, wait a minute, this are actually a couple months in. I'm like, this is a business doing $100,000 a year, thousands of transactions, lots of things to keep track of. And all I have is a Gmail. This is not going to work.
So how did you then go about building the solution that you came up?
That's a good question. So I Googled what is a SaaS because I wasn't exactly sure. And then from there, I Googled what is UI, what is UX, what's front end, what's back end. So after a couple days, I had some idea of what it looked like. And then went out and started getting quotes from software companies that ranged from about $75,000 to build it to $2 million. So that was really helpful because that narrowed it down, right? And so we fortunately we found a partner that worked out and got us kicked off, got us started, and then eventually, um, I guess with a background in entrepreneurship and doing things myself, I kind of learned how to manage the process of building software. I don't write code, I don't build software, but I know how to manage the process now, and so now we have all of our development in house here at BoosterHub.
Okay. So obviously this serves a very specific niche, right? How did you go about validating that this market was ready for some kind of tech?
Well, it was interesting because we'd come up with the idea and we shared it with a few friends. I was actually at the grocery store one day at HEB, and president of another booster club chased me down in the grocery store and grabbed my arm and said, "Hey, I heard you're building a software for booster clubs. We want to be first on the list." And that was like my moment. That was like, oh, somebody else wants this too. So no, it's really was as organic as that. And so we of course knew some of the other booster clubs here in town, so we invited them all over and showed them the idea. And in that first day we had people say, we're interested, we want to be a part of this, and here's our feedback. And then we started with a group of about 15 beta testers who are all still customers, actually. So we started with that original group, and they helped guide and shape us as we've grown, over the years.
So when did you first hit the market?
So we incorporated in January of 2021. Our MVP went live August 1st of 2021.
Okay, so you missed the COVID window where things were shut down. That obviously would have had a really negative impact on something like this, right?
It's interesting because COVID actually sort of helped us because up until COVID, there was still this kind of old school way of doing things in booster clubs where you would chase people down with a check and a piece of paper, and COVID forced everything. Like, you see it definitely in high school ticketing, everything went to online. You can't buy a ticket at the door anymore. And so the booster clubs had to kind of rapidly move over to technology because of COVID, but the booster clubs are a little slower than the schools, so it took them about a year or two to figure that out. So they were figuring it out in 2021 and 2022.
Yeah. So how did you prioritize which features to include right out of the gate?
That was really tough. You have your idea, and of course, I wanted it built as a whole thing. I didn't want the pieces broken apart. But we did narrow it down to probably about half of it as our MVP. Ironically, we just finished what would have been the original MVP 2 months ago. So it took us 4 years to build the whole original concept with a few things changed. But we really had to think about the pieces that work together. So there were some pieces that like weren't a priority, but because it's one tool that works with everything together, like we had to have certain pieces. So we had to have the CRM database because that fueled the email system. And when we built the store, there had to be an accounting piece because it had to calculate the orders in the store. So some of it was we couldn't there were things we couldn't remove, so we had to build it by necessity.
How difficult was adoption once you had something ready to go and getting it out the door? I mean, your first 15 members taking a look at it, was it a big steep learning curve for them?
We built it to be user friendly in that we recognized it would be often be a new tool for people. As a volunteer coming in, you're seeing it for the first time. So when we built the tool, it's pretty easy. We kind of kept the iPhone simplicity through the design of like, can you come in and you see people? Okay, I can understand what that does. And I see email, I can understand what that does, right? So we kept it pretty simple. One of the things that happened is we were really designed for sports teams and still are. That was really the original product, is just right down the path of the sports teams. But we had a lot of marching bands start coming to us and saying that they were looking for a new software. And marching bands they operate differently. They handle donations differently. They collect fees differently than sports teams. So about 2 years in, we had to make a pretty good pivot to be able to accommodate the marching bands and they needed invoicing and accounts receivable and things that the platform just didn't have yet. So we've built those over the past couple of years and tailored the product for that need. And now we're about 75% marching bands.
Wow.
Yeah.
So they took over.
Yeah, they did.
So how did you go about bringing in those first few customers after the MVP period?
Yeah, we were really excited because our very first paid customer was someone we didn't know. So our beta testers had kind of a 6-month window before they had to pay. So the very first paid customer was somebody that just came in off of, we had sent out an email, to a list of booster clubs, and it was somebody from that list that purchased it. And then in the first couple months, we got about 10 or 20 customers, and that was helpful because it really, those people we didn't know, they weren't friends, so they weren't as nice, and so they really told us what was wrong with it. So, and, we still have most of that first 20. I think we lost a couple of them, but, overall, we were able to tailor it and improve it and make it better over the course of several years.
Okay. So how did you reach these? You said you sent some emails out. Do you
Mhm.
have other methodologies that you're using to get it in front of
Yeah, so
potential?
initially we just had hand scoured a list of booster clubs in the United States. So we had a list of contacts that we reached out to. So that was our initial marketing plan. Now, of course, we do content marketing and social media and podcasts and all these things, right? So the layers are much deeper now than they were initially. And ironically, it's back then we were new, it was a novel idea, so we got a lot of interest off of our initial emails and such, but now we have to work a lot harder to get those new leads. It definitely takes more effort now, it seems like it than it did back then.
Yeah, yeah. Things are changing very rapidly.
Yeah.
On that note, AI, are there any AI features built into your application right now?
So we're working on a couple of AI features right now. We're looking at it in our webmaster. We've added it to some of our uh, content creation, like text uh, writing fields, and then we're looking at it as part of our fundraising module, as part of our 2026 roadmap. It's been interesting. It's moved so fast, really, that it's it's been around for a long time, but what's happened in the last 6 to 12 months has just, you know, escalated at how quickly we need to pivot. And so we're pivoting as fast as we can. Mm, but the AI technology is moving even faster than we're pivoting. So it's almost like I almost want to hold for 6 months and see where we are and then make the plan of how to put it in. Just like we started on a feature last week, and then the feature came out as a native iPhone feature. So then we didn't need it. So it was like, something had moved so fast that like, oh, well, they built it for us. So we don't have to do it. So,
It's incredible.
yeah.
And it makes it really hard to maintain any kind of a moat, right? As a company.
Yeah. Yeah, absolutely. I think one of the things that Booster Hub does is because we're the centralized hub and we do all the task in one place, so we're not just a one-off tool. Um, we're a little more insulated from, customers being able to replace us with AI just because we do have such a complex connectivity across the organization. And I think that's where AI hasn't gotten to that yet. Not yet, but I'm not saying it's not going to. It's just even on the development side, right? It can write simple code, but connecting databases and doing more advanced processes, it's not quite there yet.
So you said you've brought all your development in-house now. Is that
Hmm.
correct?
Yep. Yeah, we have a full-time team of 5 developers, our CTO plus 4, so 5 full-time software engineers here.
So how have you been able to balance the demands for features from from customers or users versus what you think would be most beneficial?
Well, I've learned that what I think is most beneficial doesn't matter. And usually, when I'm really excited about something, the customers don't use it, even though I do have the perspective of being a Booster Club leader. My favorite feature in Booster Hub, probably only 1% of the users use, but I love it. But no one else thinks it's. I think they just don't know it's there. But we listen to the customer. So we have a feature request log. If we hear the request once, we put it on the list. When we hear it a second time, it rolls up to the top. And usually, if we get the third request, then it goes right into development so that we can start working on it. If one organization needs it, then typically it's not going to make it unless we see like, oh, that's a really good idea, and we can apply that to multiple organizations. So that's how we manage the request and the feature additions.
So hypothetically, if you had a magic wand and you could change one thing or fix one thing in the business right now that might be holding you back or slowing you guys down, what would that one thing be?
The one thing is I wish we would have started our content marketing sooner. So that's what has I feel like we're even right now, but I feel like if we started about a year and a half ago. If we would have started a year before that, we would have been that much further ahead right now, and especially at a time when AI is making content much noisier and harder to stand out. I feel like we had a great window over the last 18 months, and now we're in a much more crowded window to get not just for our segment, but across the board, your people are just getting hit with so much content that I think it's hard to stand out no matter what your industry is.
So what are you doing to stand out? What is your approach?
That's a really good question. So we're definitely producing more content. So and across all mediums. Which is really my role has changed from managing the build of the software to, managing the finances to now I spend about 80% of my time on content, just because it's that important to the company now to stay out there and keep the message out there and, get the ebooks out there, get the podcast out there, get the newsletters out there. All what we hope is providing valuable information to the booster clubs who will then in turn take a look at Booster Hub. But that's really just been a huge change in my role over the past year and a half.
Okay. So do you see the potential for the platform to expand beyond booster clubs and bands in the future?
Yes, absolutely. Booster Hub is really designed for a volunteer-led nonprofits. For a nonprofit that doesn't have a full-time staff, that's what it's really designed for, and it can meet the needs of almost any organization. So we do have a couple niche that we're looking at right now that I think by this time next year we'll be focusing on those markets. Probably it'll be the same product, but it'll have a different name because it'll probably be focused on those segments.
Yeah. Yeah, that's always a tricky part and a balancing act when you go after a new vertical or a new niche is making sure like do you keep the same brand and use your existing branding and everything? Do you spin something off completely different, but it's a lot of the same stuff? That's a
Yeah,
tough decision.
It's definitely hard, especially when you put so much time and resources into content, and now you're gonna have to build that pillar all over again. So that's something that we're looking at right now, which way to do it. We know that the product as it sits can serve all types of organizations, and we do have a very small percentage that are some organizations other than booster clubs. We have some alumni groups, we have some homeowners associations, a few things like that. So, but
Interesting.
we're really looking forward to diving into the next segment in the next year or so.
Yeah, yeah, definitely. Well, very cool. Is that going to be a lot of development, do you think, or is it
Um,
mostly just a branding positioning?
It's mostly a branding and positioning thing. I think the segments that we're looking at may require some permissions changes in the system because we're built to have a bunch of admins. So you don't just have one, main admin. We can have 100 in Booster Hub, and they have different levels of permissions based on their role in the Booster Club. And so some of that we'll be looking at in these other organizations, just how the organizations operate and what their needs are.
So, how large is your organization right now?
We have about 500 500 booster clubs that use Booster Hub.
And what about the business side? How many people are in your business
We
right
have about a dozen of us, so five on the development team, and then about seven of us on the admin and marketing side.
now? Do you have any advice that you would give to someone who's thinking about starting their own business, their own SaaS right now in this environment with as challenging as things are? What would you do differently, and what would you recommend?
Well, I think the most important thing is to make sure that you're solving a problem. A lot of people come up with an idea, but it's not necessarily solving a problem. Make sure that you get a lot of beta testers who fit your customer profile or what you think your customer profile is, and then get their feedback, and then tailor what you're actually going to build to their feedback, because they're going to use the system the way they think they should, not the way you think they should.
Yeah, that early validation is critical before you invest too much time and effort into something that doesn't quite fit with what your user wants, right?
Yeah, absolutely.
Great. Well, I really appreciate you coming on. This was excellent conversation. I think it's a really, really cool idea that you're working on. Where can people find you?
Well, thank you, Chris, for having us. And they can find us at boosterhub.com. And all of our resources are there if you want information on how to run a booster club. We've got some great resources there on the website. And then also can start a free trial and take a look at the system.
Great. Fantastic. Well, thanks again. For all of you watching, please be sure to like, give us a follow, leave a review to help us get the show out to more people. And as always, keep building, keep pitching, and keep scaling. Thank you. Thanks for listening to this episode of Pitch, Build, Scale. Be sure to subscribe on your favorite podcast provider so you never miss an episode, and we'll see you next time.